Hello class, this time I will discuss to you about valid argument and fallacies. This topic is the last topic for this second quarter of general mathematics. Before we proceed to the valid argument, recall muna natin yung compound proposition. The compound proposition is composed of two or more simple propositions that are connected together by a connective words such as and or, if and, only if. So class, meron akong truth table dito. It composes of truth value for each compound proposition. Itong truth table na to class, magagamit natin siya kapag nagtitest tayo ng argument if this is valid or not. But what is an argument? An argument is a set of declarative sentences or yung propositions na to with two parts, which are the conclusion and premise. Itong conclusion na to, ito yung the ending statement, while the premise, ito yung sumusuport sa conclusion natin. Let's have an example. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. So class, itong three sentences na to or yung three propositions na to, ito yung kumocompose or bumubuo sa argument natin. Now, let's identify where is the conclusion here in this argument na to. Usually, yung conclusion natin, matatagpuan siya sa pinaka-last statement or siya mismo yung last statement of the argument. And meron siyang first word na therefore. So, yung conclusion natin dito, class, is therefore Socrates is mortal. But where are the premises? Remember that premises supports the conclusion. The premises here are the first and the second propositions, which are all men are mortal and Socrates is a man. So, dito nakabase class kung ang conclusion natin ay true or false. Let's proceed to the next term, tautology. A tautology is a propositional form that is always true regardless of the truth values of the individual statements substituted for its propositional variables. Just remember the term always true. Tautology is always true. For example, sa truth table na to, yung pinaka-last propositional form, which is if P then Q and P, ay mali. If P then Q and P then Q. Ito yung pinaka-last propositional form natin. Kung napapansin nyo, lahat ng values ng form na to ay true. Regardless kung ano man yung truth value ng kada statements. For example, kahit may false tayo sa first, second, third, and fourth column, but in the last column, lahat siya ay true, that is tautology. Kasi yung hinahanap naman natin na truth value is for the propositional form. At itong propositional form na to, ito yung kadalasan na nasa last column ng truth table. Ang argument natin ay pwedeng ma-represent in propositional form or in a standard form. For example, let's have the first argument. P1, every police officer is brave. P2, Mike is a police officer. Then Q is, Mike is brave. Para masulat natin siya sa propositional form, alamin muna natin kung what type of proposition in each premises and conclusion. P1, every police officer is brave. So what kind of proposition is that? P1 is a simple proposition. P2, Mike is a police officer. That premise is also a simple proposition. So, lagay natin P2. And the conclusion natin, Mike is brave. What type of proposition is that? That is also a simple proposition. Therefore, if we are going to write this in a propositional form, it should be P1 and P2. Tapos meron tayong symbol na if para makonect natin yung conclusion na Q sa P1 and P2. Kapag binasa natin siya, if P1 and P2, then Q. Sa standard form naman niya, class, we will simply write P1 and then in the next line, P2. Tapos, sa next line naman, ilalagay natin yung therefore sign, then Q. In this form, class, it will look more simpler than the propositional form. Kasi kung titignan natin, mas lesser yung ginagamit niyang symbols kumpara sa propositional form. Let's have the next argument. Many people are afraid of COVID-19 virus, then we should wear face masks. Tapos sa second premise naman, Maria is afraid of COVID-19 virus. Tapos yung conclusion natin dito, therefore, Maria should wear face mask. So, lagay muna natin yung symbols ng kada proposition. Yung una natin, since may word na then, therefore, that is a conditional proposition. So, ilagay natin P, if symbol, Q. Sa pag-identify if that part is P or Q, automatic yung first phrase natin dito is P. Then yung second phrase natin, after the conjunction, ayun yung Q. Then yung sa next premise natin, Maria is afraid of COVID-19 virus. If you notice, similar yung sentence na to sa first phrase ng first premise na many people are afraid of COVID-19. Therefore, we can assign this premise as P. Tapos yung conclusion natin, therefore Maria should wear face mask. If you have noticed also, yung conclusion natin is similar sa second phrase ng first premise na we should wear face mask. So, we can assign the conclusion as Q. Ayan, since nalagay na natin yung assigned variables nila, let's write the following variables into propositional form. Sa first premise natin, P, right arrow, Q, tapos close, open and close parentheses. Then yung next symbol natin is and because ko-connect natin yung first premise at saka yung second premise. Bale, open and close parentheses, P, right arrow, Q, tapos and symbol, Q. Then, i-rewrite natin yung form na to na may conclusion. Open, bracket, open and close parentheses, P, right arrow, Q, and Q, tapos bracket, close bracket, right arrow, Q. Then, i-transform naman natin siya sa standard form. So, sa first line natin, P, right arrow, Q. Then, next line. Sa next line naman, class. Then, sa next line, therefore, symbol, Q. Let's proceed to valid argument. Valid argument satisfy the validity condition, that is, the conclusion is true whenever the premises P1, P2, and so on are all true. Or, we can say that that is a valid argument If it's conditional proposition, such as if P1 and P2 and P3 and so on, then Q is a tautology. So, isa sa requirements yon, dapat tautology yung argument natin. Let's have an illustration. Meron tayong ditong dalawang argument, the argument A and the argument B. Sa first premise natin, if my alarm sounds, then I will wake up. In symbol, if P then Q. Then sa second premise naman, my alarm sounded. Tapos yung conclusion natin dito is, therefore, I woke up. Let's recall the truth table of P if P then Q. Ayan, kung ma-obserbahan nyo, kapag both true yung P and Q, the resulting truth value is true. Then kapag true and false naman, yung if P then Q natin ay false. Then kapag false and true naman, yung resulting is true. Tapos, pag both false ang P and Q, ang resulting proposition natin ay true. By using truth table, let's test if the argument is valid. Since yung premise natin na if P then Q at saka yung P ay true, so yung conclusion natin dapat true din siya. So let's find out sa truth table. Hanapin natin yung both true para sa premise 1 and premise 2. So ayan, kung napapansin nyo, nasa first row lang siya. Kasi yung sa remaining rows, TFFTFT, may mga false na siya. So ang pwede lang natin gamitin is yung first row. Now, nahanap na natin yung P at saka yung if P then Q na both true. But let's see if that conclusion Q is true also. As you see, the variable Q is also true. Therefore, this argument is valid. How about the second argument? The first premise is if P then Q, then yung second premise natin is Q. Tapos yung conclusion natin dito, class, is yung P. Therefore, my alarm sounded. So, let's see ulit sa table kung itong argument is valid or not. So, let's look at the if P and Q column at saka sa Q column kasi itong dalawa yung premises natin. So, hanapin natin yung both T. Ayan, class. Meron tayong dalawang parehas na T na nasa first row at saka nasa third row. Ito. And then, let's see the conclusion, which is P. Sa first row natin, since the two premises are both true, tapos yung conclusion natin, yung P, sa first row ay true also, therefore the first row is valid. Let's see sa third row kung valid siya. Yung dalawang premises natin, yung Q at saka if P then Q, parehas silang true, but the conclusion P here in third row is false. Therefore, this argument is not valid. Dapat kasi lahat ng premises niya at saka lahat ng conclusion dapat true. Prove that the argument if, open bracket, open and close parenthesis, if P then Q and P then Q is valid. So, lagay muna natin yung mga conditions sa P at saka Q. True, true, false, false. Sa Q naman, true, false, true, false. And sa third column, if P then Q, sundin lang natin yung basic truth table. Kapag both true yung P and Q, true. Pag true, false naman, false. Kapag false, true naman, true. Kapag both false, true pa rin siya. And then sa next column, sa fourth column natin, ia-and natin yung if, P, then Q na nasa third column at saka sa first column. T and T, true pa rin. False and true, false pa rin. True and false, false. True and false, false also. Tapos sa last column, conditional proposition naman siya. So, gagamitin natin yung kagaya ng sa third column. So, if T, then Q, which is T also, true. Tapos, if false and false, true. If false and true, true also. If false and false, true also. Kasi mag-false lang tayo sa conditional proposition kapag, kapag TF lang. Okay? Since the propositional form is all true in every condition, therefore, this argument is valid because it is tautology. By the way, this argument is also known as Modus Ponens or rule of detachment. Let's have examples of Modus Ponens. The first argument, there is limited freshwater supply, then we should conserve water. So let's assign variables, logic variables. Yung first phrase natin sa first premise na there is limited freshwater supply, ito yung P natin. Tapos yung Q natin dito ay yung we should conserve water. If we are going to write this in symbolic form, magiging if P, then Q. Tapos yung sa second premise natin, there is limited fresh water. It is similar to the first phrase of the first premise na there is limited fresh water. So this is letter P. And then the last statement, which is the conclusion, therefore we should conserve water. Obviously, this is variable Q. Let's write this argument into standard form because it is easier to represent an argument kapag naka-standard form siya. So, first line natin, if P, then Q. Then the next line, P, next line, therefore, symbol Q. Then sa next argument natin, argument B, yung first premise natin, yung P variable natin is many people are afraid of COVID-19 virus. Then yung variable Q naman natin, or yung proposition Q natin is we should wear face mask. If we are going to write this premise into propositional form, it will be if P, then Q. Then the next premise, Maria is afraid of COVID-19 virus, it is similar to the P proposition of the first premise. Therefore, the second premise is variable P. Tapos yung conclusion natin, therefore Maria should wear face mask, this is the Q proposition. Then let's write this argument into standard form. If P, then Q, next line, P, and the next line, therefore, Q. We have here rule of inference. It contains all basic forms of valid argument. So, in this table na to, ito yung rule of inference natin, wherein all of its propositional form and standard form ay tautology or valid argument. So, by using this rule of inference, hindi na natin kailangan gumamit ng truth table para matest natin yung argument if that argument is valid or not. In every valid argument forms, meron tayong katumbas na propositional form at saka standard form. But usually, ang ginagamit natin dito ay yung standard form. Let's have some examples. Determine which rule is the basis of each argument. Tell whether if it is valid. So, gagamitin natin yung rule of inference as our basis to tell if the certain argument is valid or not. Let's say the first argument, If Antonio and Jose are friends, then they are Facebook friends. So, ano yung assigned form natin dito or propositional form? Since yung first premise natin, meron siyang word na then, therefore, yung first premise natin is a conditional proposition. If P, then Q. Tapos yung sa second premise natin, since may word tayo dyan na not, it indicates negation. So, yung second premise natin ay not Q. Then yung conclusion natin, meron ulit na negation word, which is not. So, yung assigned variable natin sa conclusion natin ay not P. So, class, naka-standard form na siya. We will simply locate this argument sa rule of inference table. As you can see, meron siyang katulad dito. Ayan. Itong if P and Q, if P then Q, tapos not Q, therefore not P. Therefore, yung type ng argument nito ay modus tollens. And this argument is valid or not? Valid, kasi pasok siya sa rule of inference. Nakita natin yung equivalence niya. Next argument natin, Maricar and Maricel like algebra. Therefore, Maricar likes algebra. So, let's write the symbol of the first premise, P and Q, since meron tayong conjunction na and. Then, sa next line, yung conclusion natin, therefore, Maricar like algebra. So, we can assign this phrase as P. So, ayan, na-form na natin yung standard form ng argument. Then, let's locate if it is have the equivalent form in the rule of inference table. Let's see. Ayan, meron siyang katulad which is in the rule of simplification. If you can see in the rule of simplification, the standard form is P and Q, therefore P. Since the argument has its equivalent form in the rule of inference, therefore we can say that the second argument is valid. And its equivalent is the rule of simplification. Let's have the third argument. If the Spaniards imprison Antonio Luna, then he will repent and not join the revolution. So, medyo mahaba yung sentence natin. So, let's assign first the variables. In the first phrase, if the Spaniards imprison Antonio Luna, ito yung P natin. Then, he will repent and not join the revolution. Ito yung Q. Then, sa second premise, if Antonio Luna regrets not joining the revolution, so ito, katulad siya ng variable Q na he will repent and not join the revolution. So, i-assign natin siya na Q kasi similar lang sila. Then, he will go to Belgium to study the art of war. So, another sentence or another phrase na naman siya. Let's assign this phrase as variable P, Q, R. Yan. This phrase is variable R. Then sa conclusion naman, class. Therefore, if the Spaniards imprison Antonio Luna, then he will go to Belgium to study the art of war. So, yung first phrase ng conclusion natin is similar to the first phrase or variable P ng first premise. Tapos, yung sa second phrase ng conclusion natin na he will go to Belgium to study the art of war, it is similar to the second phrase of the second premise. Ano yung variable na inassign natin dito, class? R, di ba? So, yung second phrase ng conclusion natin na he will go to Belgium to study the art of war is also variable R. So, isulat natin yung standard form nito. If P, then Q, and if Q, then R, therefore, P, then R. After ma-form natin yung standard form ng argument, let's see if it has an equivalent form in the rule of inference. Ayan, tignan natin yung law of syllogism kasi parang similar sila. Ayan. If P then Q and if Q then R, therefore P then R. So, ayan. Meron siyang katulad dito, which is law of syllogism. Since merong equivalence yung argument natin sa rule of inference, therefore, this argument is valid. And its basis of rule is the rule of syllogism. Meron naman tayong tinatawag na fallacy. The fallacy is an argument which is not valid. So, it is the reverse of the valid argument. Kung yung valid argument ay valid, yung fallacy natin is not valid. In a fallacy, it is possible for the premises P1, P2, and so on to be true, while the conclusion Q is false. So, di ba, sa valid argument, kapag yung premises natin ay P1, kapag yung premises natin na P1, P2 ay true, dapat yung conclusion natin ay true also. But in fallacy, ang conclusion natin dito ay false. Therefore, the fallacy argument is not a tautology. So let us have an example. Prove that the argument, so i-underline ko na lang to kasi mahirap basahin, is a fallacy. I-complete natin yung table class sa P and Q, true, 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 false, false, true, false, false. So itong mga conditions na to, class, ito yung primary premises natin para makapag-derive tayo ng truth value ng conclusion ng argument natin. Sabi ko nga yung conclusion natin, ito yung pinaka-last propositional form na makikita natin sa last column ng table. Simulan na natin mag-fill ng truth value sa third column natin na if P then Q. Kung hindi nyo pa sa ulo yung truth value niya, you may refer to the truth table na binigay ko sa inyo. So, if true, then true, true. If true, then false, false. If false, then true, true. If false, then false, true. Then, in the next column, sa pang fourth column natin, ang premises natin dito ay yung third column at saka yung Q. Let's start. True and true, true. False and false, false. True and true, true. True and false, false. So, kailangan lang natin malaman yung truth value kapag meron tayong conjunction na and. Then, proceed na tayo sa last column. So, yung premises natin dito ay yung sa fourth column at saka yung first column, which is P. Bale, if T, then T, T. If F, then T, true pa rin. If true, then F, false na yon. And if false, then false, true pa rin siya. So, let's see the truth value under the conclusion natin or yung propositional form natin sa last column. As you can see, meron tayong false na isa dito sa third row. Since meron tayong false na isa, therefore, this argument is a fallacy. Gaya ng rule of inference, meron din tayong table of equivalence sa common fallacies. It contains all basic forms of fallacies. Gaya ng sa rule of inference, meron din siyang propositional form and standard form. And we can use this table para ma-test natin yung argument if that is a fallacy argument. Let's have an example. Either Joseph sings or dances with Megan. Joseph sang with Megan, therefore Joseph did not dance with Megan. Yung first premise natin, meron tayong disjunction word na or. Therefore, we will write this in a form of P or Q. Then yung sa second premise natin, Joseph sang with Megan, we can assign this as P. Then yung last statement or conclusion, meron tayong negation word na not. Therefore, we can write this as not Q. Kapag naka-standard form siya, P or Q and P therefore not Q. Let's see if this argument is in the table of common fallacies. So as we can see, meron siyang equivalence dito sa common fallacies table, which is the affirming the disjunct. Again, since we can locate this form in the common fallacies table, therefore this argument is not valid or fallacy. And its rule basis is the affirming the disjunct. Let's have another one. It is not true that Joseph sings and dances with Megan. Joseph did not sing with Megan, therefore, Joseph danced with Megan. In the first premise, meron tayong negation word na not. Therefore, we can write this at not P or Q. And then yung second premise natin, Joseph did not sing with Megan. So, kapag nakasymbol siya, we can write this as not P. And then yung conclusion natin, therefore, Joseph danced with Megan. We can assign this proposition as Q variable. So let's write the standard form of this argument. Not P or Q and not P, therefore Q. So let's find again the equivalence of these forms sa common fallacies. Okay. The equivalence of this form is in the denying a conjunct. Therefore, we can say that this argument is not valid or fallacy. Meron tayong tinatawag na sound and bad argument. What is the sound argument? It is a valid argument which also satisfies the truth condition. For example, if you studied hard, then you will pass. You studied hard, therefore you will pass. If we are going to write this argument into standard form, it will be if P then Q and P, therefore Q. So itong form na to ay modus ponens. As I said a while ago, yung modus ponens natin ay nasa rule of inference. Therefore, this argument is a tautology and a valid argument. So tignan natin sa truth condition niya. If you studied hard, then you will pass. So, true to. Hindi ka naman basta makakapasa kung hindi ka nag-aral. Then, yung conclusion natin, therefore you will pass, is because you studied hard. So, therefore, this argument is true based on the truth condition or reality. How about bad argument? Bad argument is an argument which does not satisfy either the validity condition or the truth condition. Therefore, all fallacy arguments are bad arguments. Pwede rin natin matawag na bad argument kapag valid yung argument but it is not truth in terms of its content. For example, if you are beautiful, then you are smart. You are beautiful, therefore you are smart. So this argument follows the modus ponens. So therefore valid to. Valid tong argument na to. But tingnan natin yung content if it is true or satisfying. If you are beautiful, then you are smart. But we all know that being beautiful has nothing to do with your intelligence or walang connection yung pagiging maganda sa pagiging matalino. Therefore, this argument is a bad argument.